Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own track that you would like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's suggestion comes at us from Brendan. It says, "Hey Bryan, I'd love for you to check out The Color of Sleep by Psycroptic. A great tech death band from Australia. Sick riffs and harsh vocal acrobatics." So that sounds exciting. Tech death is a genre that I think I'm kind of getting into. Archspire was on my AOTY list last year, and I don't quite know if it is an exception or if it is the rule yet, but I guess we'll find out today if I enjoy some tech death. So let's dive into The Color of Sleep from Psycroptic. We've gone through so many ideas already. We're only like, what, a minute into the track? There's a noticeable lack of bass though. It's very distinct, sharp changes between all of these sections as well. I really love the little cymbal work there. Oh, this was the opening idea. This is not. Like an old man. And another tempo change. And another tempo change. that is a fun sound. Barely even getting the full attack on each of those picks. That snare and psalm idea was pretty nice. Okay. Oh, what? I think I'm going to save the obvious topic for the end, which is going to be the vocal work. Yeah, talking about vocal gymnastics, acrobatics. I don't remember what Brendan said. One of the two, though. Spot on with that. So many ideas. We're going to get into that later, though, because to me, that's the highlight. I want to end this analysis with that. We're going to start with, well, the instrumentation, I think. There's 3 instruments here. I think technically there's probably 5. There's 3 that are audible. And they could probably get away with 4 doing this live, but I mean, so we have our drummer. Drums do, all the instruments do one thing. I guess we'll get into that in a little bit. We have our drummer, though. We have our guitarists. Is there more than one? I don't know. There was a moment when I only heard a right pan guitar, and it made me think, oh, maybe they have 2 guitarists. It was a moment of transition to introduce the next topic, cut everything out, get real dry, have one instrument, introduce the next riff, stop abruptly, everybody comes in. That kind of idea. And so I was like, oh, so what's going on the left side then? It's the same thing, actually. There is no change at all. There's no harmony. There's no texture change. It sounds like the exact same guitar tone, which makes me think that it's one guitarist just widened, put on both sides. So I'm not sure. I mean, it could very well be 2 guitarists playing the exact same thing. When did this come out? 2003. Well, what? Okay. That changes a little bit of how I think about this. Okay. So given 2003, it's very possible we had 2 guitars playing the exact same thing. We've heard a lot of metal that does that. And even one of the biggest names in metal, Metallica, does that often as well. It's just something I attribute to older metal styles, and anybody who tries to replicate or emulate or creates their sound based off of older metal, they're probably going to end up with 2 guitarists doing the same thing. It really just adds extra punch and width to it, which really works here. I mean, it's not wasted, right? Oh, it is and it isn't. They're utilizing the second guitar for extra punch, extra width. It does have a purpose. Without it, this could feel a bit anemic, but the same thing can be done digitally now, whether it's in the studio and you just double track yourself, or doing it live and you have a doubler, stereo widener, whatever you want to call it, on the sound engineer side, and just doubles the sound that way. there isn't really much of a need for it today. And granted, this is 2003. I don't know where technology was at the time. I think we were doing digital audio, so at least in the studio, it could have been done with one person. Um, and there isn't a solo in here, which would help necessitate that, as we would need somebody to do background work under a lead guitar line. So, yeah, not necessary, but it was still done that way, and just gotta accept that, I suppose. Like I said, it's nothing bad at all. It's not like redundancy can't be bad. You're adding extra stuff, even if you can't hear it, even if it doesn't add anything. It's not detracting either. So I can't really say there's anything negative. It's just kind of weird to my ears, but like I said, there's a lot of metal that does it. It's just one of those things about metal I just have to accept, because it's a huge part of its history, and as people continue to base their sound off of the older sounds, it's going to continue to be a part of metal. But here is something that I have some beef with, which is we had a second guitar that maybe wasn't necessary, that you could kind of hear and it did help, but wasn't super necessary. But I think there was a bass in here probably that is not present at all. In fact, let me check this real quick before we dive into this. I don't need to speak about this a long time if there isn't. Oh, of course, I don't have a personnel list for this. Psycroptic member list. I don't know how to search for this. While that's coming up. Yeah, I heard no bass at all. And I kind of assume that there is a bass. Most rock bands, metal bands have bassists in them, but following along with a lot of the older metal and older rock style, the bass just isn't in the mix, and it is so obvious to me. It's lacking. There is a little bit of a caveat here, though, where at least in this situation, the vocals occasionally dip down into that range. And I mean really dip down into that range. This vocalist gets low sometimes. And it's very fascinating. We'll talk about it later when we get into the vocal work. But there are some times where the bass wouldn't necessarily be needed, because the vocal kind of gets in that range. But there's still, I don't know, man. What ends up, how I feel about this, having two guitars doing the same thing, having possibility of a bass not being audibly present. It might actually even just be doing what the guitars are doing, which would not be unusual either. Having three instruments all double or triple up on the same idea really doesn't remove anything. It makes the song sound flat to me. I feel like there's more that could be expressed here. And as usual, I introduce this with the caveat that I understand it would drastically change the song. It would no longer be The Color of Sleep by Psycroptic. It would be a different idea altogether, and might even be a different genre altogether. But the song sounds flat to me. It always feels like there could be something else added to increase the listenability, at least to me, right? I've talked about this many times. I enjoy layers, I enjoy counterpoint and harmony, and if we added any of this, it would be a very different song altogether. It might not even be anything that Psycroptic has ever made in the history of their band. It would feel like it was created by someone else. But for my own listening pleasure, this is kind of a one and done. I'm glad I listened to it. It's an interesting track, but it's missing the extra oomph, the extra detail that would keep me sticking around. The second guitarist could be playing harmonies, could be playing counterpoint. Our vocalist isn't doing anything melodic, so we have a single melody line that is often just a 1 or 2 bar phrase on loop. There's so many ideas that could be played on top of that, since that area is empty entirely. Normally that's where we would put our vocalist or our lead guitar or strings or some other lead instrument to play a melody line, and there isn't one at all in any part of this song. Our vocals take the spotlight by definition because they are the one idea that is moving, whether it is their phrasing is changing or their words are changing. They have a dynamic quality to it that isn't loop based 100%, but they're lacking the melodic component to really steal the limelight entirely. Like I said, they get the spotlight by default, and they are given a little bit of extra boost production wise. Um, but there is this aspect of music that I typically really listen for, that I enjoy the most in my casual listening, that is just completely written out of here. The bass could even take the idea of having a moving idea underneath these fast guitar lines. Like there's so much room that feels lacking here. And you know, the production does a fantastic job of making this feel like a full song. I'm not going to say that any moment of this feels lacking in the sense that there's missing spaces of the sound sphere or anything like that. But my brain says, you know, there's just no lead melody here. It's not a production thing. It's not an audio thing. It's not a soundscape thing. It is purely music on paper. There is a bunch of foundational ideas. There's rhythmic ideas. There's loop-based underlying ideas that kind of insinuate a chordal structure, but there's no melody, and that's what I'm really missing here. I had 5 minutes of really hoping to hear something like that. And it's interesting to kind of invert that a little bit. I started out this video saying I really enjoyed Archspire. Let's see if I enjoy Tech Death as a whole. I didn't realize there was going to be a 20-year difference almost between these tracks, and it's really interesting to see where maybe Tech Death started, or you know, again, I don't have a wide range here. I can't necessarily say that this was the beginning and Archspire is the present. This could just be a very different branch of Tech Death that kind of leans a little bit closer to the non-technical side, maybe straight death. This really just feels to me like thrash metal in a lot of places, with harsh vocals on top of it. It is very different from my idea of what tech death is. But like I said, there's 20-year difference between my idea of tech death and this. It's very possible they're both in the same umbrella. We've listened to a lot of music that fit in the same umbrella and are quite different. But yeah, that is my big hang up right here with the way that they've constructed their instrumental roles, is that there's no melodic component, but there's plenty of instruments that could have filled that role. Now, despite me saying that it's not technical death metal, maybe it's regular, or maybe it feels more thrashy, there are some technical aspects in this for sure. First of all is just the raw performance of it all. The double bass kicks, the fancy cymbal work, the constant tremolo picking, really fast stuff. And it's not like we're just running on a single note. They are moving around a little bit, but you know, it's still very technical to play. And I don't want to diminish that from them or take that away or anything like that. There are some really neat things in here. Interestingly, I think the most memorable aspect is just a single note being played at such a speed that we really don't even get the full attack from it. And the attack is the initial sound that a note makes. And I guess technically you can't cut an attack in half. It is that initial sound, that millisecond sound of the first tone of a note. But it's just so quick. It feels like the next note is starting before the first note has even really had a chance to voice itself. It was just so ridiculously fast. And through that, we actually got a really interesting tone. I don't feel like they changed anything with their pedals or their amp or anything like that. I don't think they actually modified the tone, but because we never got the resonance, any of the resonance from the note being held out at all, it had this really mechanical sound to it. It was fascinating. I really loved that moment. I don't think it would have been improved by adding more notes or a melodic run. I really think that sitting on this one note and occasionally changing it for a different one was really the way to go about that. But it was just, man, what a fascinating sound to hear come out of a guitar. Just I'd never thought, never thought I'd hear anything like that. Um, and that description, and like I'm really gonna lean into that. It feels like they've cut the attack in half, which is physically impossible. But it really feels like we're not getting the full attack off of it. It's just such a stark sound to come out of it. Very cool overall. Um, on the other side of technicality, though, is also the non-instrumental side, which is going to be tempo. Something baked into the music itself. Our tempo shifts all over the place. I had mentioned that at 1 minute in, we had already moved through quite a few different sections. This trend continued on through the rest of the track. A lot of these sections had tempo shifts to them. I don't think anything was massively different, 10, 15 BPMs here and there. It's not like we went to some sludge and then went back up to like speed metal, then hit like radio rock about 120, 150, and then went back up to like 200 or anything like that. We didn't have these huge shifts, but they were all very minor, but they were big enough to be felt. It wasn't like a 5 BPM shift to accelerate or give a section a little bit more energy without making it feel like we've changed it all. This was enough BPM to feel the change without drastically moving to a different speed. So like I said, we're probably looking at 10 to 15 BPMs per shift, but they constantly happened. In fact, one time I think we tempo shifted into a new section for like 4 bars and tempo shifted again. Like the sheer frequency of tempo changes in some of these sections is kind of mind-boggling. I don't even know that I understand the purpose of them other than the sense of being technical. Of, oh, another change. Oh, another change. This song is wild because it changes tempo so many times. And I mean, there's some spectacle to that, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't get caught up in it. Usually I don't comment on number of tempo changes too often, but having like 3 back to back like we did in the middle, I had to bring that up. That's kind of bonkers to even think about doing. Like I said, I don't really understand the purpose for it outside of spectacle, but even if that's the only purpose, it worked. It got me. There's some novelty to that, and I think it'll wear off over time. That's what novelty does, but for a first time reaction, they got me right there. There are no time signature changes that I counted, though. Everything felt like it was in 4/4. We started in 4/4, we ended in 4/4. There wasn't a moment that I felt a shift. That doesn't mean that there isn't any tempo changes, just means that I didn't feel any. It's not super common, but there have been plenty of bands who have snuck time signature changes under my radar, and I didn't notice it until halfway into a section or something. Like, hey, when did we get into 5/8? That's something you think I'd feel. But yeah, I'm fairly confident the entire track stays in 4/4. We're only doing tempo shifts through most of them. So here's what we have, though, bringing all this together, is really fast guitar work, really fast drumming work, maybe fast bass work, don't know, never heard it. And a lot of tempo shifts and style changes. Anytime we went to a new riff, pretty much we got a new tempo with it as well. And it makes a song that feels very slippery. By the time that you start to understand what a section is doing, we've moved on to another one already, and it has a different vibe to it. Not necessarily a different riff at a different speed. So it's really difficult to get lined back up and to stay in sync with what the song is doing, especially on a first time listen. Like I said, once you get used to it, you start to be able to figure out when the shift comes and where we're going with the shift and what riff we're going into, and you kind of begin to feel the song. It becomes a little less slippery. But for a first time listen, it feels like it is a chaotic song, constantly moving all over the place. This is only exacerbated by the vocals, because wow, these vocals are all over the place. I mean, the music is fairly chaotic. Tempo shifts all over the place. Constant tremolo picking, different riffs popping up every 16 bars or whatever. The song is just always moving forward. There's only one part that I actually caught a call back. We might have went back to a chorus. I don't know. But there was one section I was like, oh, that's where we were. But even halfway through that, we didn't continue on the way that we did the first time. We went in a different direction. I was like, oh, that's actually not the original section. It's variation on it. So it feels entirely linear. It's just this. It's like being in a tornado. You never know, what you're going to see next. What's going to be whipped by you. And the thing is whipped quite literally. The time that you see something and start to figure out what's going on, we've moved on to another thing. This is very, very fastly moving through ideas. Brain broke there for a second. Let's get back on the vocals though. So our vocal work is just as chaotic. He can be in one type of growl for a second or two and move into a different growl and then make it turn into like a fry and then put a little bit more crunch into the fry, add a little bit more vocal into the fry, remove that vocal, turn it into a growl. Kind of go into straight fries sometimes, just really working on just that raw crackle sound, that just really digging into that without trying to convert it into a growl or a scream or putting any vocal cord within it. It's just the raw flexibility and variety that this vocalist uses matches the energy and speed that the song is employing, and it is a beautiful marrying of these two ideas. And I feel like this is something that really speaks to me. Musically, I said that this is technical and it is very deathy, but it's not the technical death metal that I would want to listen to. It's missing that melodic component. But when I think about Archspire, I think about how much I enjoy the music, but I'm not a big fan of the vocals. They're very monotonous, very one kind of style. You really don't get a lot of variety there. And when it comes to harshes, I kind of need that. Clean vocals bring their own variety to the table just through pitch variation. And some of my favorite vocalists tend to mix cleans with harshes, and that's another layer of variation. But when it comes to harsh vocalists who kind of only do harshes, they also typically, not always, typically stick with one or maybe two kind of styles of harshes that they can bounce between. And Archspire kind of only does the one. And I find the vocals to be a bit boring. They have that rhythmic component that I find very fascinating at times, but there's not a lot going on that really my brain fancies in the way that it loves the musical component. This is the opposite. I'm not a big fan of the music. It's interesting at times. I love the rhythmic components, but it's not super interesting to me. But the vocals are where the magic is. Around every corner, I was thinking, what are they going to do next? Or I guess, what is he going to do next? I don't know. It's just like I said, growls, rasps, crackles, pure fries, fry cleans, fry growls, fry harshes, fry screams, just like all sorts of ways to manipulate the false chords to create all sorts of different sounds and tones and shapes. There are some times that I could just picture these really wide open mouth shapes to achieve these tones, and then mixing with whatever he's doing in his throat to get the textures out. And it's just a bonkers combination of sounds. There's a lot of times, while the music certainly kept me on my toes and was always progressing to a new idea, I was usually more interested in how the vocals were going to evolve and modify, more so than what the new riff on the guitar is going to sound like. And that is certainly what kept me going, and what is interesting me in the future of Psycroptic, or in my future listening to Psycroptic. I do want to check out more, but not really for the music. I want to hear more of this dude's vocals. They are bonkers bananas, and I gotta listen to them. I don't know how long that novelty will stick around. It could be that just really toss the entire his entire repertoire out there in this track, and listening to other tracks is just going to be more of the same. But I do think he's still got tricks up his sleeve, and I got to listen to him. But like I said, any future experience with this group, especially on my own time, is going to be purely for the vocals. The music, while interesting at times, just isn't enough to keep my interest for an entire song. So with that said, let's dive into the lyrics and see what the song is about, because usually I'd be talking about the atmosphere or the themes that I got out of the music, and honestly, I didn't get much. It's just a fast, chaotic track. It feels like being in a tornado, in some sort of whirlwind, just carrying you along. You got to be there for the ride. You don't know what you're going to see. You don't know how long any event is going to last, but it just is. And maybe the song will go into that. It's called The Color of Sleep. And this was not a song that reminded me at all of anything passive like sleeping. So, our lyrics: sleep for life. There's an ellipsis after each of those words, so I put in the space there to really draw out the theatrics of saying it that way. Fear shreds your internal logistics system. You are just a pawn fool driven by a disturbance inside your mindscape. It is the consuming unknown that awaits you, and you cry, for you cannot escape the ache. The void is nearly here. Nerves are tested by a circumstance invented by the mere existence of our world. You can feel that there's something more than just progressing life, while your neighbor will deny, deny, deny. You awaken and you're shaken by the dim reality that becomes you and consumes your mind, that death is real and you will soon hold it in an embrace so tight you can't let it go. You want to believe in something higher. Social derision, blindfolded vision, a need for decision, nothing's eternal, belief is infernal, your God is internal. Alright, so this is all a run-on. There's no, like, stanzas here. I don't know if that's just the way that the person typed it, or if this is how it appears in official documentation of the lyrics. But I'm going to stop here just for a second and kind of explain what I'm hearing here. So the sleep appears to be not a traditional element of sleep, but a feeling of not being connected to one plane of reality, possibly the true reality. Kind of like when you sleep, you dream. It's kind of weird. The song we just got done listening to from Cocteau Twins, I likened to sleeping as well, to dreaming. And here we are again. It's so, why is this week have so many connections? I don't know. Then this is another song that's linear. Oh my jeez. The trends continue. Okay, never mind. If this is like, if you don't watch the show every day and you're just popping in, this is the first time you're like, everything I'm talking about is kind of meta. This week we have just listened to so many tracks that are primarily, actually, no, not, okay, so that just doesn't work. The trend this week hasn't been linearity, it has been singularity, where the whole song's been based off of one idea. So yeah, this doesn't follow in that pattern, but it does follow in the pattern that today both songs have been about sleeping. Alright, anyways. So, like when you sleep, you dream, and it's another level of consciousness, and it's different than the real world. And if you're sleeping in a dream, then you're interacting with elements that don't matter in a sense. When you wake up, anything you did will have just been contained to that dream world and will have affected anything in the real world. And dream worlds can be entirely unique on their own. They can, be ruled by science that doesn't work in the real world or anything like that, decision making and stuff like that. So, the idea that dreaming or engaging with sleep is denying the existence of reality. It says that people can sleep for their whole life. It starts out, it's a very strong thesis there. It says sleep for life. not necessarily, like I said, physically sleeping, but just not engaging with the reality of the world, engaging with a dream version of the world, something that doesn't actually exist. Um, says we're pawns driven by disturbances that consume us. We want to escape, but we can't, and we cry for it. Um, he says you can feel like there's something more than just progressing life. There's something more than just living, than just being. Says, but your neighbor will deny that. They're the ones living in the dream, I suppose, is where they're going with this. You awaken and you're shaken by the reality that becomes you, that death is real and soon you will hold it. So it basically says that time is short. Once you break out of this dream, you realize that your time here is short and you want to believe in something higher. He says there is nothing higher though. It says nothing is eternal, your beliefs are infernal, and your God is internal. There is no greater power that's going to help you understand your purpose here. So that's everything up to this point. It says you may not exist soon, so enjoy it while you can. The power is in your hands. Deciding moment of your sad life. Oh, the power is in your hands in that deciding moment of your sad life. Controlled by a thing called time, only fate's forces can decide, rotting before you've even died, swept away by the fear inside. So yeah, going along with this idea that, nobody knows when you're going to die. Time has that power, but you can rot away before you've even died. You can waste your time here, basically. You can become mentally or spiritually dead before you physically die. This is something they don't tell anyone when they're born, but once you think for yourself, your test begins. If you try, you can suffer less if you deny looking at the sky. You can read someone else's way of getting by, but you'll have to buy. You'll have to purchase. It will soothe your pain until you wake again. Oh man, that is good. Yeah, so we have this homophone. I don't know the one. Anyways, the words sound the same, they're spelled different, have different meanings. So you can read someone else's way of getting by, of living your life, but you'll have to purchase their way first. And says it might soothe your pain until you wake again. So you're not purchasing someone's thoughts of getting by in life. You're purchasing someone else's dream. You're once again disconnecting from reality and working within what somebody else tells you. And not only are you doing that, denying yourself your ability to find out your purpose in life, to find out why you're here, to make the most of your time, you are just you are wasting your money buying snake oil of someone else's ability to put you back into a dream. That is good. Says you will feel the reign of the dark. They all believe in lies, but why? Is it so hard for them to see logical reality? We bleed, we die. There's nothing once you finish life. Tearing knife, wrists are sliced, decrease time those who can't defy. All right, we had a lackadaisical addition of suicide in the lyrics, which maybe something will make sense in a second. It's just a door that opens and swallows you inside. You're just another one of us. Don't you think you get to decide? Oh, don't think you get to decide. Don't think you'll wander somewhere when you're rotting in the ground. You'll be where there's nothing called taste, sight, feeling, or sound. Don't waste time. Save your life. It's all you have as part of man. Now is the time to live for. You are your guide, but there's no one but you who can tell you how to be. I fear death, so don't feel alone. I don't judge those who cry. We're all brothers in metal. We already rule the world now, so sleep, you're free. The color of sleep. So, yeah, a really interesting way to bring this out at the end. It feels like around the 70%, I really felt like it could have gone in a couple of directions. One of it, nihilism. But in the end, it has a very bright message. It says the only way for you to Yeah, okay, so it says that there are people who will try to defy time. Okay, this is where the suicide part comes in. People who will try to defy time and take their own life. But all you have done is decreased your time here because there is nothing on the other side. You are given a gift of life. And if you decide that you want to be the one who decides when you lose it, you're also losing out on any time in the future. So he says, he says there's nothing on the other side. Nobody gets to decide when they go unless you want to waste your own time. He says, don't think that you'll wander somewhere when you're in the ground. So don't think that you can come back as a spirit or a ghost or you'll go to an afterlife. He goes, where you'll be, there's no taste, there's no sight, there's no feel, there's no sound. Don't waste your time. Time is the only commodity you have. And I like how we have this idea of not wasting time by sleeping earlier, but we also have don't waste your time because the last time came up was those who commit suicide decrease their time. So that's another view of wasting it. It says don't waste your time and savor your life because it's all that you have. Now is the time that you need to live your life. Says there's no guide out there. No one can tell you how you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to live, what you're supposed to do. And he says it's okay to fear death. It's scary. He says I'm with you. I'm not going to judge you if you cry. I've been there too. But we're all brothers in metal. It's interesting right here at the end. He says, so now you can sleep because you are free. And to me, I think it's interesting because I think this is a reversal of the word. Rather than sleeping as a way of being blinded to the reality, we're now sleeping in a more physical sense. You can sleep now that you're free. And this could either be the physical sleep, the rest, or it could be the eternal sleep. Feel free to embrace death because we all will. It's scary. But live your life so that in the end, you can find your rest. Very cool. I love all that positivity at the end. Because, we've checked out a few nihilistic things in the past few months. And they all kind of had that same tone. There's nothing in the end, so why bother with anything? And I like how this kind of takes that concept, there's nothing in the end, and flips it. So live for now. And I love how it didn't go for that super macho, manly man. Don't fear death. Just, live your life, and when you're done, you're done. No, it says, you can fear it. It's fine. We've all cried about it. We've all thought about it. We've all had wild anxiety about what, the next area is, the next type of being, what it is to be nothing. It says, so don't worry and don't judge those who get, who cry about it, who fear death, because, that's just part of living life. So good. So good. What any of that has to do with the music, I don't think anything does. Other than the fact that it just says you should live your life on your own terms, and the music exists on its own terms. It is a wild whirlwind, and life can sometimes be like that as well. But I also just think that this is their style of music, and that's what they make. So, I don't know. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Psycroptic's The Color of Sleep. That's where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Anything that stood out to you. Anything you'd like to add on or correct me on. Go ahead and leave those ideas down there. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel. You can pick up some merch, join me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord community, email me. I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff in there. Something's going to interest you. Go check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with our penultimate song for Beautiful Songs Week and our final special selection for the week. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.